So the remaster is out, and on November 15th, Paizo also released their first errata drop, so we can go ahead and correct both the player core and the GM core, as well as additional books, which is fantastic. So in this particular video, we are going to be doing player core, and I will do GM core and the other books in separate videos. Now, this was all recorded on a single live where we kind of sat down for a large period of time and went through all the errata, but I thought it'd be better to kind of chunk it up into smaller pieces where people can kind of view what they want to view and not have to sit through parts of a live that included books that they might not own or aren't interested in. If you don't play a Magus or if you don't play a Psychic, well, then you might not be that interested in those sections. So with all that being said, let's get into player core. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the theSlyStrategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. Player Core Errata, and that's the book we're in. We're in Player Core on page 131. So on page 131, the penultimate sentence of the Dematic Display Druid feat, basically what they're asking us to do is to remove the end creatures are not affected if they can see you. They're saying it was erroneously added after bringing this feat over from the Advanced Player's Guide. And the demoralize attempt gained from the visual trait is the important part of that sentence. So this whole little part of this sentence is no longer exists. You don't have to put that in there anymore. Oh, and just so everybody's aware too, because I've done this little highlight thing. Now, if you bring this up in a browser, you won't necessarily see the highlighter, nor will you necessarily be able to save the highlighted sections. I do recommend just getting the free Acrobat reader, or if you know of a better PDF reader that can do it, that's perfectly fine. But I've actually saved all these as errata documents. So when I'm playing myself and I go and I look up a spell, I can see that there is a change made to it because these highlights are going to remain the same. So for the Druid feat, Dematic Display, you remove that and creatures are not affected if they can see you. Next, we're going to be going to page 141. And on page 141, aggressive block feat was erroneously changed to be a reaction. So after the feat's name, replace the reaction symbol with the free action symbol. So what they're saying is right here, this would not be a reaction to something happening. It would just be the open diamond shape indicating that it doesn't cost one of your actions. And then we go to page 155. Once again, a lot of these are minor changes. There are some big ones. Don't get me wrong, but I did want to go through every single one of them. But they're talking about in the key term sidebar. In the key term sidebar, under Warden Spells, change the last paragraph to the following. So we're going to take this whole paragraph here, and it is now going to read, focus spells are automatically heightened to half your level rounded up. Certain feats give more focus spells. The maximum focus points your focus pool can hold is equal to the number of focus spells you have, but it can never be more than 3. The full rules for focus spells appear on page 298. The change here is that in the pre-remaster version, you could have different focus points in your focus pool than you actually have focus spells. And they just want to stipulate that, once again, you cannot get above 3. So that is the max that you can have. Next, we're going to be moving to 215. And I keep looking over for the chat to see if there's any questions, because I don't just want to jump around without having the questions answered that people would like to know. And there are some things, once again, especially once we get to Champion, Magus, and Psychic, there are some bigger changes there. So first sentence under Expert Spellcasting feat, replace Expert and Spell Attack rolls and DCs of the appropriate magical tradition with Expert and Spell Attack modifiers and spell DCs. Prometheus, yes, it will. Printing run, yes, they will. Like the player's handbook that we have now is the 4th edition. So yes, they will continue to update the print editions as they do editions. And they will also be moving the PDFs. So you'll get those books there, plus your PDFs. If you go look on your order screen, it'll be when it was added to your download, when it was updated, and they'll also have a section on when it was added and when it was last updated. So they'll also update the digital downloads, your PDFs in the digital download section, so you will be able to get that as well. So under your Expert Spellcasting feat, Expert in this is replaced with spell attack modifiers and spell DCs. Once again, because remember, it's not a divine spell DC or an occult spell DC. It is now just a DC or a spell DC. They don't differentiate between them now. And you're going to find the same type thing as well under Master Spellcasting Feat. You're going to change Master and Spell Attack rolls and DCs to the appropriate magical tradition, where now it's Master and Spell Attack modifiers and spell DCs, simply because we're getting rid of those traditions. From the spell DCs, you just have a single spell DC. And then we'll get to a non-highlighted one, which is page 235. So page 235 is long jump. Basically, the change they have is in the success condition. It says you leap a distance. Well, now it would be up to between leap and a distance. So you can leap up to a distance equal to your check result, rounded down to the nearest 5 feet. And it just has the wording similar to the high jump success and critical success entries. And I like the example. They always do a little bit of comedy in here, but after all, we don't intend to force you to jump all the way across the room and into a wall if you happen to roll high. So you're not going to overshoot. You can do an up to and choose how far you'd like to jump. Then we go to page 281. And if I am going a little bit fast, it's only because there's a lot, and this might be a little bit boring if I go too slow. But once again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat, and I'll answer it right away. So we are on page 281 here, and one of the things that changed is in the range weapons table, changed the price of the arbalest from 12 GP to 8 gold pieces. So that is going to be this entry right here is going to be changed in your digital downloads, the PDF later, and in another printing of the Player Core book. Then they have multiple entries, 304, 307, 309, and it's all for the day's spell description. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. We'll go to the first one, 304. So in the Black Friday, yeah, maybe it'll go back up in 1st of December. You never know. After Black Friday happens and Cyber Monday, for days. Cloud a creature's mind to make it off guard or slow. So on all 3 pages, the day spell description should read cloud a creature's mind and possibly stun it. So they did just want to change that day's description. Let's go ahead and go to the other 2 pages that this has it in here, and I'll show you where on the page it is. So one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to go ahead of time and highlight these so it'd be much easier for everybody to see. But also in your divine spell list in 309 is going to be in your occult spell list. So days is just stun, not off guard or slow. Then we go to 307. So 307, talking about Grim Tendrils. So on 307, you want to remove Grim Tendrils from the list of divine first rank spells. It was not intended to be added to the divine list. So it's just going to be removed in a future printing of the book or in your digital downloads come later. Then we do on page 314. So on page 314, there are 2 typos in the Acid Grip spell. So the first one, area 1 creature, should be targets 1 creature, because area 1 creature doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we have duration 1 minute. The persistent damage dealt by the acidic hand determines how long the spell lasts. It's not a minute. So it's not like you can just touch them and it lasts a minute. The duration is going to last, as it reads, as long as you have your hand on it, because duration is going to be removed. So on page 316 through 317, actually it's the persistent damage is going to go as long as the persistent damage lasts until it is taken away. Next one is on page 316. Once again, I know this is going a little bit quick, but it's going to go a lot slower once we get to the champion things, I pretty much feel. And that's going to be coming up pretty soon, actually. So battle forms listed in the avatar spell need more information for their Strike's Deadly trait. And basically, they added the deadly dice. So for Caden, in the melee rapier, you need to add deadly 3d8. For Desna, Star Knife, you you need to add Deadly 3d4 right here. For Erastal, you need to do Longbow 3d8 needs to be added. Right now we have just a Deadly d8, but it should be Deadly 3d8. Shaylin is going to be the Glaive Deadly 3d8, and Urgathoa is going to be a Scythe Deadly 3d10. So these are the changes that need to be made to these particular pages. And then we also have both the Bane and Bless spells should have the Aura trait. So be aware to pay attention to. Bane is going to have an Aura trait right here on this line, and Bless will have the same. Bless is going to have another Aura trait added. So on page 320, Cleanse Affliction. So it accidentally lists 2 casting times. 2 actions is correct, so delete the cast 1 minute. So you have... Oh, I didn't highlight this one. I will highlight it now, as a matter of fact, since we're sitting here. So Cleanse Affliction. And then, let's see, Cleanse Affliction spell accidentally lists 2 casting time. 2 actions is correct, so delete the cast 1 minute. So for Cleanse Affliction, you're going to delete that right there. Then on the other 320, which is Clear Mind, the 320, 321, Clear Mind, Sound Body, and Sure Footing. Remove many different conditions. And this, I feel, is a pretty important one. I like it a lot, actually. But none of them could get rid of slowed. So these will actually allow you to get rid of slowed now using these particular ones. So adding the slowed condition to the list of conditions you can attempt to counteract with all of these spells gives your group the best chance possible to deal with that particular condition. So this is going to be at the heightened 4th level. So on heightened 4th, you can add slowed to that for Clear Mind. You can also add it to Sound Body. So Sound Body, you're also going to add Drained and Slowed to the list of conditions. And then Sure Footing, which is on page 361. Sure Footing, you're also going to be adding it here to the heightened 4. So we have those ones there done. Now we're going to go to our move one, which is Control Water on page 321. So 321, Control Water, right there in the middle of the page. Control Water does not list a duration for how long it changes the water level. So basically the way it reads now, it's a permanent alteration. And what you need to add is you need to add, after defense, you need to add duration 1 hour. That way you don't control the water and change it, and it stays that way until the end of time. Then we have on page 329, 329, we have Enfeeble. It does not rely on a spell attack roll, so it shouldn't have the attack trait. So we have it highlighted right here, but that attack trait is going to be going away, and it's something you shouldn't pay attention to. So for your multiple attack penalty, Enfeeble does not count. Then we go to page 331. Page 331. But your water kineticist. No, your water kineticist cannot control water until the end of time, unfortunately. So on page 331, we have the Figment spell is intended for all manner of sneaky shenanigans. So they're basically saying you should add the subtle trait here. The subtle trait means that you don't have, or it can't basically be detected, auditory or manipulate. And then we have page 332. Well, we can just scroll down because it's just one page. So your Frostbite spell. Frostbite spell does not rely on a spell attack, so it shouldn't have the attack trait. So we're going to be removing the attack trait right there. So once again, it won't affect your multiple attack penalty. And then we have 358. This is another bolded one. And usually they bold them if they feel that it's important, or to highlight it, basically. I don't want to say it's necessarily more important because that's subjective depending on, once again, if you're playing a water kineticist, then control water does matter. But For these are generally what they consider larger changes, or they want to highlight this change. So the Speak with Plant spell was erroneously printed with too many action symbols. You can see right here it has two actions, which mean 4 actions, which means unless you were hasted, you could never actually cast it. So now it is just 2 actions. Then we have page 363. 363 is reposition has been added to the list of standard athletic skill actions, so the telekinetic maneuver spell should offer the same options. So you can add reposition between disarm and shove. So right here you can add that new action, which is reposition, which is actually a great action. And reposition basically allows you to, let's say if you have an opponent who's in a corner and you can't flank them, you can't do anything, you can't get behind them, or they're blocking a doorway. Well, what you can do is you can grab them and you can move them. Before, technically, all you could do was shove or try to do something along those lines, but shove them only moves them in one direction. Now you can actually grab them and move them, and reposition allows you to do that. So we are going to move on to page 382 for Tempest Surge, Druid Focus. Tempest Surge, it does a bit too much when a target critically fails their reflex save, so you need to remove all references to persistent electricity damage from the spell description and its heightened entry. So you basically be removing this 1 persistent electricity damage, and the persistent electricity damage on a failure increases by 1 from both of those entries there. So it kind of gets knocked down a peg. Then we have on page 403. On page 403, we basically have let's get to the right section here, in the 3rd paragraph under spell attack rolls. Remove the sentence, like your attribute modifier, this proficiency rank may vary from one spell to another if you have spells from multiple sources. Once again, because we have the unified spell attack proficiency rank and the unified spell DC, across traditions, this sentence no longer applies. So you're just going to ignore that sentence. Let me go to page 411. So 411, this is for me the biggie, because I made a whole video about this and then I had to take it down. And I took it down because it didn't apply. And it kind of, I didn't want to give the wrong impression, and I felt bad that anybody did, so I made sure I put a post in the comment thing. But this is the big change that kind of had everybody in a ruckus, including myself. I was pretty much in an uproar about it, and I was tossing and turning in my head on how I wanted to play the old or the new way. But the text for the wounded condition was changed for consistency, but became consistent with the wrong piece of text. So they basically said that they did make it consistent, but it's wrongly consistent. This would lead to much deadlier encounters. The following changes should ensure that death and dying works the way we intended. In the recovery check degrees of success, remove all incidents of plus your wounded condition, if any. So these go away, which is more like how we used to play it. And undertaking damage, remove the final sentence that reads, if you have the wounded condition, remember to add the value of your wounded condition to your dying value. The reminder should only apply when you gain the dying condition after getting knocked out. Ventriloquism is not subtle. You have to gesture. I don't know. Let me finish with the dying thing, and then I'll go take a look at ventriloquism. So with the recovery checks, how it used to read, these were not here, but this sentence was here. So there was some inconsistency there, and people didn't know exactly how to play it. But what they did is they made it consistent by putting this in here, and now you could be permadeath in 2 rounds if you already had a single wounded before you went down on a critical fail. So now they're basically making it the easier, earlier way. Ventriloquism. Let's take a look at ventriloquism really quickly. Spells. Ventriloquism is not subtle. It absolutely is not. Any creature that hears a sound can attempt to disbelieve your illusion. So no, it's actually written in the spell that it is not subtle anymore. And you have to manipulate. Doesn't whenever you speak or make any other sound vocally, you can make your vocalizations. Now that's an interesting point you come up with, Prometheus, is you have to gesture. Yes, you do. With the manipulate trait, you do have to gesture. Audible makes sense. But yeah, according to the actual traits themselves, yes, you do. Okay, now we're going to go on to the last part of the player core, and that would be 422. So 422 is creatures of different sizes, and basically how they had this before, and it's written right over here. And it was basically, it read that a tiny creature could move through your space, but you couldn't move through theirs. You'd have to do a tumble through or something along those lines in order to go through. But you need to add the following sentence to this paragraph, which is similarly, other creatures can move through and end their movement in a tiny creature space. Yeah, I guess it isn't. At least not this pass of it. I didn't see anything for ventriloquism. I didn't see anything in there in the spell description that was talking about gestures at all. But it does have the manipulate trait, so technically, yes. House rules, well, I guess the game is there to make sure you have fun. If it's house ruled to make it more fun, then house rule it to make it more fun. That's kind of my view on it. If something is causing you to not have fun playing, then change it. That's my thought. Now, I do hope you like this overview of the errata for the player core. There was a lot of stuff in there. I'm very glad that they did it. I'm very glad that the recovery checks might have been taken down a notch on the deadly scale. But with all that being said, I do hope you enjoyed this errata roundup. And if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.